Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the National Press Club. I'm Andrea Edney. I'm an editor at Bloomberg News, and I am the 111th president of the National Press Club. Before we get started, I'd like to take a second to ask you, if you haven't already, please take a minute to silence your cell phones. We don't need them going off during today's program. If you're on Twitter, our handle is PressClubDC. And the hashtag for today's event is NPC Live. I think is there also a hashtag for Free Austin? Do we know? Free Austin Tice. Hashtag also Free Austin Tice, and that's the important one right there. So we are here today to take what we believe could be a very real step in bringing Austin Tice home. Austin has been held, most likely in Syria, since 2012. In his short time on the ground reporting in Syria, Austin worked for the Washington Post and a McClatchy team that was recognized with a George Polk Award for outstanding coverage. Representatives from both news organizations are here today, and you're going to hear from them a little bit later. We are so pleased to welcome Austin's father, Mark Tice. He and Deborah Tice, Austin's mother, have been Austin's champions. They've been there for him every single day, and they're going to tell you about their upcoming trip to the Middle East very shortly, or Mark is going to tell you about their upcoming trip to the Middle East very shortly. And there are other organizations here today, such as Reporters Without Borders and Georgetown University, who have done so much to help Austin, and they're continuing to do so. So we're going to hear something from both of them as well. First, we're going to hear from Robert O'Brien, who is the U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs. He's going to give us a briefing on what his often does, and to the extent that he can, he's going to give us an update on Austin's case. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Robert O'Brien, Special Envoy for Hostage Affairs. Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you. Very nice. Thank you, Andrea. It's an honor to be here at the National Press Club. So it's I stand with the club and all that you're doing to promote the freedom of the press around the world. It's an incredibly important mission, and it's a mission that you're continuing with your advocacy for Austin. So thank you. We appreciate the club's efforts in addition to Austin to support the safe recovery of American hostages and unjustly held detainees from around the world. I bring you greetings from Secretary Pompeo. Secretary Pompeo has been intimately involved in this case and continues to be actively involved. I want to thank Mark and Deborah Tice for having me here today to help shine a light and shine the U.S. government spotlight on Austin's situation. They're amazing people. Their courage and determination is something that has not only been critical to the efforts to recover Austin, but it's inspired me in my day-to-day work, not just for Austin, but for all the hostages. So thank you, Mark. And I know Deborah wanted to be here, but I know she's here in spirit, and hopefully she's watching on the webcast. So if you're watching, Deborah, hello, and thank you. As the Presidential Special Envoy, or Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs, my job is to lead the diplomatic engagement on behalf of the department, on behalf of the government, to bring our hostages and our unjustly held detainees safely back to the United States. In so doing, we work with senior leaders around the world. We advocate for the hostages within the United States government, within our interagency partners, and we work with the victims' loved ones who are all incredibly dedicated and committed, as are the Tices, to bringing their loved ones home and bringing them back to the United States. So I'm proud to serve in this role and grateful for my colleagues. We have a number of folks here from the interagency and from the U.S. government. We have Rob Saley, who is the director of the Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell, the HRFC, which is the interagency cell that brings all of the intelligence on hostages and detainees together in one place. It's one of those things, there are plenty of people that criticize government for what it it doesn't do well. The HRFC is an example of something that the government does do very well. And so Rob's here, Ambassador Doug was here, Diane Ryan's here, and a number of other colleagues and FBI agents who've been with this case and who've been working this case diligently from the time that Austin was taken. Since my coming into office at the end of May, I've traveled to numerous countries across 4 continents to work with our friends, sometimes our adversaries, and others to bring the hostages home. And I'll continue to engage at that level. As many of you know, Austin's case is a tough one. He's been missing. He's been held captive since August 14th, 2012. This past summer marked the 6th anniversary of his captivity. That means 6 birthdays, 6 holidays, 2,282 days have come and gone while his family and his friends have been waiting for Austin to return. He's a son, a brother, a father, a friend to many, as I've learned already in this position, and it's now long past time for his captors to allow Austin to come home, to return to his country and return to his family and friends. I want to make it very clear that the United States government believes that Austin Tice is alive. We're deeply concerned about his well-being after 6 years of captivity. Over the past several months, Secretary Pompeo, Ambassador Bolton, our National Security Advisor, UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, and I have met with the Tices to keep them apprised of U.S. government efforts to find and safely recover Austin, again, to bring him home. We're grateful to our international partners who have engaged in great efforts on our behalf. I can't name many of those partners, but I can assure you that there are other countries and other leaders around the world that care deeply about Austin and that are working very closely with us and making him a priority. His cause is something that's known around the world. I also want to thank the journalists who have been unswerving in their commitment to bringing Austin home. So we've got great FBI agents who've been following every lead, every clue that we can discover about Austin, but journalists have been working their own networks and have been bringing leads and information to us. We're grateful for them. It's very impressive to see the folks for whom Austin worked supporting him all these years later. The McClatchy newspaper group, it's one of the great newspaper groups in the country, out from my native California. They're here today, and I'm grateful for McClatchy's continued support of Austin and for, again, keeping him in the paper and for the efforts your reporters are making to help recover him. The Washington Post is here as well, and another great American institution. And as you heard, Reporters Without Borders, which has an incredibly important mission, especially in the field that I've found myself, and Georgetown University have all been making great efforts. Pariah states like Iran, terrorist organizations around the world continue to take Americans hostage or unjustly detain them. They do it because they believe that they can extract some sort of concession from the United States or that they can obtain political leverage over the United States. And I can tell you that is not going to happen. The other thing, we are not going to be terrorized. Our reporters are going to continue to go to the toughest places on earth and report. Our aid workers are going to continue to go to places where humanitarian needs are greatest, and American aid workers will continue to help people. Americans who have a right and a long history of exploration and travel will continue to travel and will continue to explore, and we will not be intimidated. As I've said publicly before, the idea that we will somehow barter for innocent Americans like they're some sort of trinkets in a bazaar is not going to happen. And we call upon every group and every nation that's unjustly holding innocent Americans to release them and release them unconditionally. If your group or your country wants to have better relations with the United States and the people of the United States, then let our hostages go. November 10th is the Marine Corps birthday, as many of you know. Austin served in the Marine Corps before laying down his rifle and picking up his pen and his camera. And but he's got the toughness of a Marine, and I'm sure that that's sustaining him through these incredibly trying circumstances. The Marine Corps motto, I was had the honor of attending one of the birthday events in Orange County, California last night before flying out here, is Semper Fidelis, always faithful. And I want Austin and his parents to know that we're keeping the faith with you, and that we're going to continue to pray, but we're also going to continue to work as hard as we can until Austin is back in the United States and back together with his family and friends. Again, thank you all for being here. So many of you have contributed far more to the search and the efforts to recover Austin than I have, and so I'm honored to be in your presence, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you today, and let's bring Austin home soon. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Mr. O'Brien, for those moving words. We can take a few questions right now, if there are some.
I may not answer them. So.
And please wait
Sure.
for the mic and introduce yourself and your news organization.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien, Jeff Shogel at Task and Purpose. You said the government is confident that Mr. Tice is still alive. Have you received a proof of life since August 2012? And what group do you believe is holding him? You mentioned Iran. Does that indicate he might be held by Hezbollah?
I can't respond to either of those questions, but thank you for asking.
Hi, please wait for the mic.
I'm Carol Morello with the Washington Post. Could you give us, in general terms, a sense of why you think he's being held so long? And could you be a little more specific on, you said that Secretary Pompeo was intimately involved in this. Can you tell us exactly what he and Mr. Bolton, something about their involvement as well? Thank you.
Sure. So there's a lot in those questions that I can't answer, but what I can say is that Austin is a strong, fit young man. We have every reason to believe that he is alive, and beyond that, I can't say anything further on that front. We believe that he's being held captive in Syria. I don't want to get into anything further on that front either. I'm sorry. I'm not a very good interview for you or Jeff today. As far as Ambassador Bolton and Secretary Pompeo and Ambassador Haley, I can tell you that Ambassador Haley has engaged with her colleagues at the United Nations, with other governments that we believe may be able to bring influence to bear that would help Austin. With respect to Ambassador Bolton and Secretary Pompeo, they have both met with Mark and Deborah Tice and received regular reports, but I can't, I don't want to get into any further involvement that they've had in the case at this time. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Landay with Reuters. I'm a former McClatchy reporter who shared the polk with Austin. I believe Secretary Kerry tried to enlist or sought to enlist the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov in trying to persuade the Syrians to let Austin go. Can you tell me whether or not this administration has raised the case with the Russians and asked the Russians to at least help mediate his release? Are the Russians being helpful?
So thank you for being here, especially as someone that worked with Austin. That I know that means a lot to his colleagues and to his family. Look, the Russians. What I will say is the Russians have tremendous influence in Syria. That's very clear. There are plenty of areas of disagreements between the United States and Russia at this time. One of the things that both Russia and the United States should agree on is that innocent Americans or innocent Russians, for that matter, should not be held hostage and should not be held against their will. And we continue to call on the Russians to exert whatever influence they can in Syria to bring Austin home. It would certainly be something that if the Russians had a role in bringing Austin home. It's something that the United States would be grateful for, and so we do continue to call upon the Russians to work with us in this area.
We'll take one more question now, and then if there are additional questions, we can take them at the end of the program.
Thank you. Mark Irons with EWTN News Nightly. We saw President Trump publicly vocal before the release of the American hostages in North Korea, and most recently Pastor Brunson in Turkey. Why haven't we heard the president publicly speak out for Austin Tice? And would the president speaking out draw more attention to this case and hopefully help secure his release?
So there's been no president in my lifetime that has been committed or as successful to bringing Americans home, unjustly detained Americans home, without paying concessions than President Trump. It's been extraordinary. You pointed out a couple of examples: North Korea, certainly Venezuela. Pastor Brunson was a great day for all of us as Americans to see him come home and to see him and his family in the Oval Office with the president. I can tell you that the commitment from the president, from Ambassador Bolton, from Secretary Pompeo, from Director Haspel, from Director Wray, it's unwavering to get our folks home. Each one of these cases is different, and will bring different tools to bear at different times when we think it'll be most useful to bring the hostages home. I can tell you that the president is aware and is briefed regularly on Austin's case, and he wants Austin Tice back with his friends and family as soon as possible. And at the appropriate time, if we felt it was helpful, the president would take whatever necessary measures he needs to help facilitate that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien, and there may be more questions for you at the end of the program. Now I'd like to, oh, no, please stay. I'd like to ask Mark Tice to the stage to say hello and to tell you about the trip that he and Austin's mom are about to take. And yes, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thanks to everyone for being here. Robert, thank you for being here, and thank you for all of your efforts for Austin and for all American hostages being held abroad. I can't tell you how much we appreciate the work that you do. Deborah sends her regrets for being unable to attend today, but she does send her best regards to everyone here and her thanks for being here. From both of us, thank you, Andrea, to the National Press Club for hosting this event. And I want to give a very special thanks to Bill McCarran. Bill, are you in the room? He just stepped out. Okay, great timing. Okay. And I point out Bill especially because he's the one that really had the vision for this wonderful initiative that you're going to hear about. And Deborah and I are also very grateful to the distinguished group that's here today to support this initiative, the Night Out for Austin Tice, and to support Austin and his safe return. Most of these people have already been mentioned, but I just want to say, Craig, thank you. Chris, thank you. I'm sorry. Robert, of course. Margot, thank you for being here. We look forward to hearing from you. McClatchy, the Washington Post, Reporters Without Borders, all of these organizations have been incredibly stalwart in their support of Austin, in their support of our family from the very beginning. For all of these 2,282 days that Austin has been held captive. There are also a number of very special people in this room that are very dear to us, equally dear to the people that have already been mentioned because of their efforts on Austin's behalf in support of our family to bring Austin home. I'll mention a few. I won't mention all of them. Kevin McClatchy, sitting here in the front row, has enable his organization to provide their full support from the very beginning of Austin's captivity, and we very much appreciate that. Rob, the hostage recovery fusion cell team, members that are here have been an incredible source of support and so amazingly active, and hopefully in the end, we believe effective in bringing Austin safely home. Thank you to all of you that are here, and also to those like Jonathan in the media, the journalists out there, putting their feet on the ground, digging for information, keeping Austin's name as much as they can top of mind for everyone, we hope, in this country. We thank you, all of you, for doing that. So Deborah and I are in the midst of planning our 7th. To be honest, we thought about this. Maybe it's our 8th trip to Beirut before the end of the year. Every time we go, our greatest desire is to bring Austin home. Each time we go, we apply for a visa to enter Syria, to get as close to Austin as we possibly can, and to try to reach out to those holding him captive. We continue our relentless effort to find the key that will open the door for Austin's freedom. This initiative, the Night Out for Austin, may very well be a part of that key. And it will certainly grow the awareness of Austin's captivity and grow the support for his safe return. And for that, we're very appreciative. We know Austin longs to walk free. 2,282 days. Austin urgently needs to be freed. May it be soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So before you sit down, we have something for you. We made Austin and his parents honorary members of the National Press Club, and I have here Austin's membership card. His number is 25155. This is Austin Tice.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we have one here for you and for Deborah. Please come see us soon.
Thank you. We will. Thank you so much.
You are such wonderful advocates for your son, and we are so happy to do everything that we can to help the efforts to bring him home. So, ladies and gentlemen, the reason we're here today and the reason that the Tices are traveling and speaking out for Austin is, of course, to bring him home. That's our goal as well. So when we noticed in April that the FBI had set aside $1 million for a fund for information that leads to the safe return of Austin Tice, that meant something to us. We figured that $1 million is a good start, but we wondered if we could help increase that, maybe to $2 million. That would be a good goal. So we came up with a project, thanks to Bill McCarran, our executive director here at the club. We're calling it Night Out for Austin Tice. At the National Press Club, we have 2 restaurants. And so we thought we could create some materials that talk about Austin, talk about who he is. Maybe not everybody knows that he was a second-year law student at Georgetown before he went to cover the conflict in Syria. Maybe people who come to our restaurants would like to know that he was a Marine, as Robert mentioned earlier, and as many of you already know. Or maybe they'd like to know he was an Eagle Scout, or that he did his undergrad work at Georgetown. Austin has a lot of ties in this community. And by talking about Austin, we are helping remind the public what a journalist is and what dangers a journalist can face when he's trying to bring a story home. So we're also keeping his name and Austin's story active, and that is critical in cases like this. We were also thinking about the other restaurants in Washington and maybe whether they would like to participate. DC has hundreds of restaurants, and up in Bethesda, other parts of Maryland, Virginia, there are also hundreds. So when we look at our partners in this, maybe the Washington Post, maybe McClatchy or Georgetown University, all of the people here, everybody has their favorite restaurant or their favorite 2 restaurants or their favorite 3 restaurants. And we at the Press Club have them as well. We have 3,100 members and everybody has a favorite restaurant. So before long, we think there could be materials about Austin in hundreds of restaurants in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And we have some plans to take this national as well, and we'll tell you about that in the future. So we're going to start with Washington and take it from there. We have a date set for Night Out for Austin Tice. It's May 2nd. That's the night before World Press Freedom Day. So everybody here, mark your calendars. You guys are all going out for dinner on May 2nd. And pretty soon we're going to tell you which restaurants you should be visiting. We are going to donate 50% of our revenue from our restaurant revenue from Night Out for Austin Tice to the Austin Tice Fund. And that's what we're going to ask our partner restaurants to do as well. So 2 final points on this. 1, the funds that are submitted by our restaurant partners are going to go to the National Press Club Journalism Institute, our nonprofit affiliate, which is run by president of their board, Barbara Cochran. And that's going to be held there pending direction from the FBI, which is directing the reward program. We're not going to do anything with the funds until we hear from the FBI. And if there comes a time when we realize that Austin is on his way home and rewards weren't part of bringing him home, then we're going to take direction from the Tices, who have thought through some charitable uses for that money. And then the funds would be donated to the appropriate NGO as directed by the Tices. Now we'd like to ask a few other people who are here helping to come up and say a few words. So first, please welcome McClatchy CEO Greg Foreman, who made the special trip to be here with us today. Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm Craig Foreman, the president and CEO of McClatchy, and I'm also a former foreign correspondent. And on day 2,282, thanks to the wonders of modern communication, I'd like to say that today would be another wonderful day to free Austin Tice. And we use that hashtag across the 30 mastheads in 14 states that are the McClatchy Company. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here and grateful that all of you are here too. Thank you, Andrea and Bill and the National Press Club for organizing this event. Austin went to Syria to tell stories of real people in impossible situations. He focused largely on what the war meant for everyday citizens there. Children, families, the destruction of what was one of the world's most beautiful countries. His award-winning work taps into our sense of compassion, fairness, humanity, some universal truths. Austin represents the very best of a fiercely independent and relentlessly determined press, vigorously investigating and confidently reporting on the best knowable version of the truth. That is an American tradition, journalism that shines a light into dark corners, some of the darkest corners of humanity, journalism that speaks truth to power and that holds the powerful to account. That is what an independent press is all about. It's a patriotic pursuit, but it has cost Austin his freedom. Over the painful years of this prolonged absence, we at McClatchy have been dedicated to ensure that Austin's story continues to be told. It's an aspiration that's shared across our company, from our newsrooms to our boardroom. And I personally want to recognize Kevin McClatchy, our chairman, who's with us here today and also represents the McClatchy family's dedicated support of this effort throughout the years. At McClatchy, we continue to publish articles and op-eds across our news sites. We've raised flags to the top of our buildings and banners inside our newsrooms across 14 states. And if anyone around the world on the webcast is watching, check the hashtag #FreeAustinTice and you'll see. This effort continues from our headquarters in Sacramento to Washington, D.C. with the message Free Austin Tice. We'll continue to tell his story until Austin returns home, and that's why we applaud the efforts of the National Press Club and of the U.S. government for trying to secure Austin's release. This Night Out campaign will not only raise money to match the FBI's reward for information leading to Austin's return, it will bring Austin's story to Americans across the country in a new way. And as more people learn of Austin's captivity, they will add their voices too to our campaign, our united campaign to free Austin Tice. We're honored to be with Mark, thinking of Deborah, with Reporters Without Borders, the Washington Post, Georgetown University, the National Press Club, and many others to hold the vision and to repeat our goal to free Austin Tice. We believe and thank the government, and we believe it's time for his country to do what it takes to bring Austin home and end this long ordeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Kevin, also for being here today. Now we have Margot Ewan, who is the North American Director of Reporters Without Borders, which has been deeply committed to Austin's case and has provided great support for his family. Margot.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. It's so amazing to see a packed room. And I also want to thank the Press Club, Bill McCarran, and Andrea Edney for putting on this amazing event this morning. I'm so glad to see so many people in attendance. As everyone here probably knows, Syria is one of the most dangerous countries in the world for journalists. In the past 6 years, approximately 192 professional journalists, citizen journalists, and media workers have been killed. The country ranks 177 out of 180 countries in Reporters Without Borders World Press Freedom Index, just 3 places from last place. Reporters are victims of violence by all parties: the Syrian military and its allies, the various armed opposition groups, including the Islamic State and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the Kurdish forces, more recently the Turkish incursion into Afrin in early 2018, and of course during advances in Idlib just a few months prior. Frequent intimidation, arrests, abductions, and murders constitute a horrendous environment for the media. Reporters Without Borders has been working to document abuses against the press in Syria, calling for investigation into murders of news providers and advocating for those in detention, like Austin Tice, to be brought safely home. But of course, our work is not limited to Syria. We do global press freedom work, and unfortunately, we're already at 78 professional citizen journalists and media workers killed so far in 2018, which surpasses the number of journalists killed last year. But of course, we are not able to do the great work that we do without the support of other amazing organizations, and particularly media organizations like McClatchy and the Washington Post, who are here today. And we're so grateful for everything that both of your organizations have done to highlight Austin's case, but also the plight of journalists around the world. It means the world to us. I also, of course, would like to thank Emily Lenzer at The Atlantic for all of the work that she's done as well in assisting on this case and other cases of journalists hostage. It's incredibly important. And it's very important that the Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs is here to address this room today, showing just how much the U.S. government is putting into bringing Austin Tice home is really important and invaluable. And of course, the Night Out Initiative is such a wonderful opportunity to invigorate members of the American public in getting involved in Austin's plight and pledging money to encourage that he is brought swiftly home. It's incredibly encouraging to see this effort ongoing. So thank you so much for putting this together, and thank you again for being here today.
Thank you, Margot. On behalf of journalists worldwide, thank you for all that you do and the spotlight that you shine on issues of journalist safety around the world. We have a note from President John DeGioia, the president of Georgetown University. He was hoping to be here today, but was unable to make it over to the club. So he sent a note along for me to read. It goes, Austin Tice is an exceptional young man from a remarkable family. His courage and the courage of his parents, Mark and Deborah, inspires us. Moments like these, when we are able to affirm our support, remind us of the community across our nation that stands with the Tice family. Georgetown remains deeply supportive of their efforts to bring Austin home. We have been privileged to play a role in his life as an undergraduate at our School of Foreign Service and as a law student at our law center, and we remain committed now in these efforts to return him to his family. We are hopeful that today's announcements will focus new energy and will help bring Austin home, and we look forward to that day. So thank you to Georgetown, to President DeGioia for that statement. Our suggestion is, wouldn't it be a wonderful service project to have Georgetown student volunteers canvass all the restaurants in DC to encourage their participation in Night Out for Austin Tice? So we'll talk to you about that a little later, President DeGioia. Now we have a representative from the Washington Post. It's their Vice President for Communications, Chris Karate. Chris.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you to the National Press Club for holding this event today. As Andrea mentioned, I'm Chris Karate. I'm our Vice President for Communications at the Washington Post, and I'm so honored to be here today representing the Post, to be here in support of the Tice family. I know that our publisher and CEO, Fred Ryan, had very much wanted to be here today and deliver his always beautiful remarks. But I have just a couple of very quick things that I wanted to share on his behalf. The first is really, as our reporters in the newsroom think about Austin Tice and other reporters around the world who are fighting every day to, share stories about what's happening in these far-off places that a lot of us never even get to see. We tried to think about what they can be doing. A lot of questions come in to me, to our publisher, about what can we be doing here? And thankfully, with the help of McClatchy, we now have our own banner in the newsroom to help remind reporters every day about the hashtag, how they can be keeping this in the public eye, reminding people that Austin Tice has still not come home, which I think is really important to have that public-facing outreach. The second piece is, I don't know how many of you had seen that we recently launched the Press Freedom Partnership Program. One of our partners, Reporters Without Borders, is here. Margot, thank you. And as part of that ongoing initiative, which is really meant to, provide platforms for a lot of these wonderful, wonderful organizations who are, working to highlight what journalists are doing around the world, we wanted to make sure that we were giving them space, that we were giving them platforms, that we were helping raise this publicly. And I think the Washington Post is a great place to do that, right? We're in the center of, we're in the power center of the US, power center of the world, and we can really do a lot here to raise that awareness. So as part of that ongoing initiative, we are actually going to be devoting a good amount of ad space to the Night Out initiative. Our hope is that by doing that, we can encourage more restaurants to get involved. Restaurants love free advertising, so we're hoping we can get a lot of them signed on. We would love to see big, beautiful, full-page ads, homepage takeovers, highlighting all these wonderful restaurants, and then encouraging people to get out on that date, May 2nd, right? On that date, to see how much we can raise towards this incentive fund, which is so very important to bringing Austin home. So the Washington Post remains committed to helping in any way that we can. And thank you so much for letting us be here today. Thank you.
Chris, thank you so much for that. And we've also had preliminary conversations with McClatchy about similar advertising. So pretty soon, all of you are going to know which restaurants you should be, where you should be eating on May 2nd. And we encourage you to get reservations in advance to let the restaurants know that this is something that they should be doing and that people are really focused on it. So if we have additional questions from the reporters in the room here today, this is a great time to ask them, and we can invite the relevant people to answer them to come up. Let's see. And Jeff, I think, has one right here.
Thank you. I just had a quick clarification about the night out. Is
Yes.
it that 50% of the cost of the meal goes to the restaurant and the other 50% goes to match the fund?
It's 50% of the revenue raised that evening at the restaurant.
Okay. What does the other 50% go to?
Well, I would imagine costs and, because you have to pay for food and service and stuff like that. Yeah? Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, in the back.
Yeah, Kevin Diaz, Houston Chronicle. You say that there has been a $1 million reward out since last spring, I think it is, April. Is there any evidence that it's had any kind of demonstrable effect, one way or the other, on this entire case?
That is an excellent question. I wonder if Mr. O'Brien could address that a little bit.
So the answer is probably not, and I don't want to put my FBI colleagues on the spot right now. But again, I'm sorry for being such a terrible interview today. But this is, of course, a sensitive matter, and so sure.
As a follow-up, I guess what I'm trying to get at is it believed that this kidnapping is a kidnapping for ransom or profit, or that it's ideological or political or some other category?
It's often hard to know the motives of folks doing this. Certainly in this case, we believe that Austin was targeted and kidnapped because he was a journalist and because he was an American. And we have had success in the past through this program with bringing Americans home, and reward money has been paid out. And so it's been a tool in the toolkit that has been successful for us in the past with other hostages. And so we're hoping that it'll have a similar effect with respect to Austin's case.
And our understanding has been from the FBI that the reward fund is a really good thing to do that does often have an effect. That's our understanding based on our conversations with them. I think we can safely say that.
Hi, Toby Capian from EWTN News Nightly as well.
Hi.
I guess I heard about the different countries that we're trying to connect with and use them to again reach out to help free Austin Tice. What countries are not cooperating with the U.S., I guess is my question. Where do we seek more cooperation that we're not currently getting it?
Mr. O'Brien, is that a question that you can take? Maybe you should not sit down again. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to take or not take these questions as they arise. Look, there are countries that are very helpful. Many of those countries that are helpful for many reasons don't want to be named. Across the board with respect to hostages and detainees, there's no question that Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has been taking Americans hostage and unjustly detaining them, people like Bob Levinson and others, and so Zhizhu Wang, Siamak Namazi. So the Secretary has called out their malign behavior and has told the Iranians very clearly that if they want better relations with the United States, that this hostage taking and unjust detentions of Americans have to end. Iran is also heavily involved in Syria and Lebanon and Yemen and other places that it's a malign influence in the Middle East, and they need to change that behavior. And that's one of the reasons why we have comprehensive sanctions on Iran at this time. Look, in all of these conversations, I always make it very clear. The American people want to have excellent relations with the Iranian people. There is no reason that the United States and Iran and the people of our country should not get along. It's the Iranian regime that's engaged in this malign behavior and sponsored terrorism, has taken Americans hostage, attempted to build a nuclear weapon, has called for the destruction of the state of Israel. I mean, there's just a litany of things that the Iranians have done. And so a long answer to your question, I can tell you that the Iranians are not helpful, and they're heavily involved in Syria. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions from the room at this time? Well, everyone, I want to say thank you so much for being here with us today. Please tweet Free Austin Tice, NPC Live. Your presence here today, the stories that you write, the news that you broadcast, these raise awareness. These are things that can make a true, real difference. They can help bring Austin home. So please keep your attention on Austin Tice. Let's do everything we can to bring Austin home soon. Thank you.